So, hello everyone. We're not going to share the slide. I think it's not necessary. We have all these lovely people here today. Really an amazing panel, actually, because we have members from the ICAI, the president and the vice president of International Center of Academic Integrity as guests. We have a president of World Education Research Association, and we have board members of European Network of Academic Integrity. So people that are really, really involved in this question and have so much knowledge to give us. So I'm very, very excited about this panel discussion today. The theme of today is COVID-19 teacher qualifications. This pandemic has changed pretty much everything, the way how we teach. Suddenly everyone is teaching online, and we have so many questions. How did it go? What lessons did we learn? What happened in different parts of the world? Because we have here people from different continents that can give us some great insights about this. So my name is Sonja Bjelobaba. I'm Vice President of the INAI, European Network for Academic Integrity. I'm from Uppsala University in Sweden, and I will be just moderating today. And may I please introduce to you Camilla Roberts. She's a president of the International Center of Academic Integrity. Camilla, could you say a few words about yourself as an introduction?
Yes, that is fine. So yes, my name is Camilla Roberts, and I'm currently serving as president of ICAI, but my full-time position is I'm the director of the Honor and Integrity System at Kansas State University in Manhattan, Kansas in the US. And in that role, I predominantly work with our honor code to make sure that that professors are upholding it, the students are being held accountable to it. And so, especially in terms of this panel, a lot of my interaction is with professors to help them either report violations or also to be very proactive to try to do things so that they will not have violations in their own classroom. So I look forward to our conversation today.
Thank you so much. We have a very engaged teacher from Dublin City University, Fiona O'Riordan. Could you please introduce yourself as well?
Thank you, Sonja, and hello, everybody. It's really lovely to be here today. So yeah, my background, I work in the Teaching Enhancement Unit, so I'm no longer sort of teaching. I'm now working with staff to try and support them. And one of my kind of key projects is around assessment, in particular supporting staff to design assessment that promotes academic integrity. And more recently working with students as well, primarily as a result of ICAI. We joined ICAI last year and took the invitation as a license to run a week-long academic integrity week in DCU. And we had great success with it. In particular, the declaration walls were really insightful and very encouraging to see how the students really do want staff to do, as Camilla said, to kind of, have that honor code, commit to, to making sure that our university is held to the highest of standards, because they're very frustrated when we don't do that. So more recently working with students. So that's a little bit of background from me. Thank you.
Amazing. We will definitely want to hear more about assessment strategies later on. But let me introduce Valerie Denny here as well from ICAI.
Hello, everyone. I'm Valerie Denny, and I am with Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University, and I am an assistant professor there in the Department of Decision Sciences. So my perspective may be a little bit different from some of the others. I teach classes, but I'm a real advocate for academic integrity and really try to serve as a resource for our faculty members, really trying to get our faculty members to have the conversation about academic integrity, to be a resource so they can ask their questions, feel comfortable about talking about it, doing things like really trying to convince the faculty that it's important that if you see something, you have to write it down and why that's important. The last thing I want to say is that there are 3 campuses with my university, and I'm with the campus called Worldwide. So we teach nothing but online. I've been teaching online for the last 5 years, and our campus is known for that online. So hasn't really been a whole lot of change for us other than our enrollment has increased substantially.
Yes, but I assume you have so much experience because you have been teaching online even before the pandemic. So we are eager to hear more about that. But let me first introduce Mustafa Yunus Eryaman. He's a president of VERA, which is World Education Research Association. Welcome. Could you say a few words about yourself?
You're on mute.
And unmute yourself, please.
Thank you, Sonja. I am very honored to be here today to participate in this great conversation. I am the president of the World Education Research Association. Association has 62 country representation in the council, and we have a task force is dealing with the global pandemic issues and global challenges. But when we talk about global challenges, we mostly think about the COVID-19, but there are also important global challenges such as HIV, climate change, and forced displacement and conflict resolutions, which affects the students' access to education. Therefore, our task force is in the process of creating a agenda for future educational strategies for educational research and educators. So I am very happy to be here today, and I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Okay, thank you. And now I invite Inga Gaija. I'm never going to learn that one. Inga, you just have to say it yourself. Gaijauskaite, I think.
Very well. Yes.
Great. It took me a couple of years.
From Lithuania. So my primary background is in research. I'm a sociologist, and currently I work at Lithuanian Social Research Center. However, over 10 years already, I have been also teaching at the university level for students, and now I teach at Vilnius University, Faculty of Philosophy. And contrary to Valerie, so most of my experience is face-to-face teaching. So today I think what I would like to share and reflect upon is this sharp moving totally online and what I see as on the one hand opportunities and on the other hand, of course, challenges and how I tried to deal with that. And also I'm a board member of European Network for Academic Integrity, which also puts things in perspective. So I'm really glad to be joining this discussion.
So thank you, Inga. And last but not least, another colleague from the European Network for Academic Integrity, Salim Razi.
Thank you, Sonja, and I'd like to welcome you all to this session. It's my honor to be here with you. I'm an associate professor working at Çanakkale 6 Mart University at the Department of English Language Teaching. I'm also the Vice Dean of Faculty of Education and the board member of European Network for Academic Integrity. I'm proud to be involved in the research project, NAI research project, through which we were able to establish this network. And especially considering my situation at my school, at my institution, I'd like to specifically highlight the interaction between K-12 and higher education, especially in many of the institutions. Plagiarism, contract cheating, and the other issues related to academic integrity or academic misconduct. They are taken into consideration when it comes to higher education. However, as teacher trainers here, we need to teach our trainee teachers that they need to encourage their students to develop such skills before they come to university. Thank you.
So thank you all, and such an amazing group of people with so much experience. So my first question, everyone went online suddenly overnight. So there is some previous research that our dear Tracy Brettak did last year, that online education can have less students cheating because they are more mature. But I don't think this really is what happened here, because this wasn't a choice. This was really a situation that's completely new. So what is the difference? What are main problems you see and main challenges when it comes to academic integrity? Camilla, could you say something about it?
Well, yes, I think that the one thing that you mentioned is exactly right, that our students and faculty did not choose. We have Valerie who has chosen to be a professor online when she probably applied for that position. She knew it was an online professor position. And I would say that, yes, many of our students, at least in the US, when they do choose online courses, they are typically older. They are maybe coming back for another degree, or maybe they have other family members. I mean, they need some of the flexibility of possibly the online courses, or maybe they have to stay in a certain location. And so the online courses really open up a lot of opportunities for those students. But when COVID happened and students were forced online, I think the tough thing for those students is many of them had never had that experience. They didn't know how to actually go about learning online and doing a lot of their own learning and taking a lot of the course material and not necessarily teaching it to themselves, but they had to take definitely some ownership in learning it for themselves. But then on the other side, you also have these faculty members who, some of the faculty members that I work with in particular had never taught online, had actually stayed far away from it and avoided it at all costs. And now they were forced to do it. And so there was a huge learning curve in terms of just technology for a lot of our faculty members, especially our older faculty members who normally would avoid that idea of technology. And so when you put those two together, at least from my experiences, that we have these professors who might be struggling in their own regard. So maybe they think they're getting the word across, they think they're getting the ideas across, but the students are not quite getting it. And they don't necessarily know who to go to. And especially during the March, April, May time period, when we were in more of a complete lockdown where students weren't even able to be on campus, they didn't really know how to interact with their professor. Yes, they should have emailed them. Yes, they could have done this. And that's when many of the students that I've interacted with have chosen to go online to look for answers or work with people that they might have had their text phone number. And so I think it's a culmination of both sides, that it's not necessarily just the student's fault. It's not necessarily just the faculty's fault. It's just the perfect storm to a certain degree. So those are kind of some of my initial thoughts.
Thank you. Fiona, what happened in Ireland?
Okay, well, interesting to hear Camilla talk about, and I think Inga may have mentioned it already also, about the challenges offering opportunities. So for us in Ireland, the pivot was a shock. I mean, there's no doubt about it. We could talk about that for a long time, but rather than focus on the shock, I think it's good to look at the opportunities that gave us. And one of the big opportunities that our academics told us the pivot gave them was they started to chat to their colleagues. And for the first time in a long time, everybody in our university was talking about assessment. So for so many years, many of us just continued to repeat the way we were assessing. We didn't really question it a lot until our programs were up for review or redesign. But all of a sudden, it was on everybody. It was the top. It kept everybody awake at night. Everybody wanted to talk about it, wanted to share experiences. So the challenge really for us turned into a great opportunity to really have those deep conversations and meaningful conversations about how to design assessments that promote academic integrity. And we have been trying to have those conversations with the academics for a long time and really didn't have a lot of success despite our best efforts. But all of a sudden, we had the momentum. And the other opportunity was that, procedures can work slow in universities. So making changes to your assessment strategy can be problematic sometimes and can need a sufficient or considerable lead-in time. Whereas now the senior management were open to fast-tracking these changes. And so things were happening in real time, which was really exciting. And the other thing Camilla mentioned about technology, the tech skills, again, it was a shock to a lot of staff, the move into Zoom. A lot hadn't even experimented with Zoom. A lot weren't using the virtual learning environment, perhaps as well as they could do. So all of a sudden, it gave the opportunity, it offered us in the Teaching Enhancement Unit the opportunity to work with academics to help them upskill. It was probably too much and too fast, and lots felt overwhelmed. But in upskilling the staff, the students then had the benefit of I suppose, seeing their academics embracing technology and learning technology with them. So I think that was a really, to upskill both staff and students, it was a great opportunity. And again, as Camilla said, my initial thoughts, lots more, we can talk about it later, but I'm always afraid of hogging the floor, so thank you.
Yeah, so there were advantages as well, not only disadvantages. I think so too. Let me see, Mustafa, what happened in your field?
Actually, there are three issues needs to be discussed in this category. And the first one is the structural, the second one is pedagogical, the third one is ethical issues that we faced during this process. Structural issues mostly about the university's capacity to do online teaching, because it requires extensive spending on infrastructure of the internet and other capabilities of the university. And they have to also provide computers with the camera and equipment to go online and teach these courses. And in many universities, they had really difficulty to get funding for the project. And then if you are a private university, and then if you get money from your students, and then if they don't register, and it's a big issue for the universities. And technical level professors, I think, as other colleagues mentioned, that they were not ready for the online education. That's all their life they were teaching face-to-face. And then when they had this COVID-19 issue, they have to get their equipments, they have to learn the softwares, and then they have to get their equipments. And this at the student level, some of our students are living in the provinces, not in the main cities, but the villages. And then the villages, they don't have connectivity issues, they don't have computers, they are accessing the online programs through their cell phones. And these are the technical issues that these people faced. And the second one is pedagogical issue. There's a big difference in online and teaching face-to-face. Therefore, you need to have a pedagogical training for teaching online. And in a short time, it was impossible for the universities to prepare the regulations and the procedures for how to integrate your courses into the online system pedagogically, correct way. And we are still having difficulties of training professors in the universities about how to integrate pedagogical strategies into their classroom instruction. And the third one was the ethical issues. The Data Privacy Act. The professors are teaching and students are sometimes sharing the parts of the lesson to the public. And there are big scandals, especially in many parts of the world, in regard to the professors are teaching the way they teach on face-to-face, and then the jokes they are making, and the discussions between students and professors in regard to some hot topics that we can call. And these were the very problematic issues, and some professors had to resign from their universities. Even the one president of the university had to resign because he made a joke about the students. He did that joke many times in the face-to-face, and then there was a sense of communication within the classroom about this joke. But when it went out to the public, and the president of the university seen as an unprofessional teacher, instructor in that case, and then he had to resign. And this issue of data protection, and professors are sharing videos from their home, and then if they don't use a screen behind, and if you share some, for example, if your dog is coming, your cat is coming to the screen, and sometimes one of your neighbor is ringing the bell, and then it changes your motivation to the class. And these are the very problems that we faced during this first times. What I can say is this, I think I can summarize in these 3 categories.
That's amazing. And I totally agree. I've been teaching online since 2005, almost entirely online. So for me, it was just, okay, now everyone is doing what I'm doing, what I've been doing for 15 years. But I really can't imagine switching from campus to online overnight. And they did it yesterday at 10 in the evening. We got an email from my department, you have to switch from tomorrow to online because Uppsala had too many cases. And it was like, how? So I'm amazed about this amazing job actually teachers did. But Inga, let me hear.
I would like to one thing. Some universities are organizing their law departments. Their lawyers are now instructing professors about the ethical and legal consequences of the sharing of data in terms of online teaching. Therefore, I think in the future it's going to be an interesting area of research of the legal consequences of these online teaching issues. Sorry for interrupting.
Oh, it's totally fine. It really is so complex, a complex situation with so many aspects. So thank you for providing us with a bit of a structure how we can approach that issue. Inga, what do you say?
Thank you, Sonja. So one of the things that was in particular in my head in spring resembles something what Fiona said, that I was glad that the topic of academic integrity became much more public and discussed. And not only at the university level or at the faculty level, because of course everyone started discussing, so what do we do with the assessment? So what precautions we have to take, how do we have to structurally organize everything, but it was also outside academia. So we had some articles in the media, we had some discussions in social media, and I think this is a very important side effect of the situation, that the issues of academic integrity became somehow stressed, and I think it will have like positive effects in general. Another thing, so yes, probably the initial shock was somehow common, but what I observed is also that we had quite many differences and quite many diverse situations, starting with the universities, because universities had different structures and different infrastructures and different practices. Some have been installing Moodle environment for each subject for quite a long time already, and others did not do that, or they had it at separate faculty levels. Also, we have quite different approaches from teachers. Some used some part of online learning in their face-to-face classes, and others, as Camilla said, were completely resistant to that. They didn't see a meaning, and they were fine for their subject. Yes? So I think that the experiences are really, really diverse. Probably another thing which always comes to my mind, that again, despite the shock, I think what we have now, this all online learning, still is the continuation of what we had before. And I think depending on how this continuation happened in each particular case, we have a bit easier or more difficult transitions. So my own experience is that even without any external triggers, I have been using Moodle for every subject for quite a long time. And my students would know that they have to check the subject environment every week, because everything is there. If you missed a class, you go to Moodle. If you want to check some assignment, you go to Moodle. If you want to know what's coming for the next 3 seminars, you go to Moodle. So for me, it was not such a shock, and not me and my students in spring, because it was very fast. So on Monday, we had our face-to-face lecture. On Thursday, we received message that from next Monday, everything is online. So they knew that what they do, they go to Moodle, and I do the same. I go there and I put the note that everything is going to happen very similar. We just, on Monday, we connect online. I put instruction, how do we do it? And we meet. But I can imagine that this was quite a shock if there was no such a continuation. Yeah, so if there is total silence between the professor and the students all of a sudden, and in a sense now probably we have kind of a backup plan, because as Sonja said, it's the same happening now in Lithuania, that almost all universities now announce that we are going back to the online learning. Some started in September, but some still kept some part of face-to-face learning, and now we are moving. And I think we have this backup plan much more now. And again, I think it's a positive outcome, because even if we prefer face-to-face teaching, this online environment can be always for us as a really good asset to a certain extent. So probably these are the key points at the moment.
Yes, and I assume there are big differences in different countries in the world, because in Sweden we have, almost everyone has computers and access to internet. We have been using learning management systems for ages, and everyone is actually using them, even if they teach on campuses, as you did. And then it makes it much easier to switch to an online education, because some parts were already online. But I think one aspect, for instance, filming yourself and making educational films, that's for many people completely new. But everyone is doing it now. They just realized, okay, you can press on Zoom and just record yourself, and okay, fine, it wasn't perfect, but good enough. And that's the difference, because people were assuming that everything must be perfect. It must be like a television level of quality when you make movies, but it's not really that important. The message, the content is much more important. Salim, can you tell us more about the situation in Turkey?
Okay. I guess we need to have a consensus on the terminology here. We are talking about distance education, we are talking about online education. However, I guess we need to give more emphasis, more room for emergency remote teaching. What we mean by emergency remote teaching? Okay, we were already familiar with distance education, the principles of distance education. For example, as a lecturer, I considered myself familiar enough with the situation, because I supervised previously a thesis on distance education. However, when it comes to the COVID case, we were forced to turn from face-to-face education to online education. So it was impossible for many teachers and for many students to follow the principles and the expectations of distance education. So it was something that we did as an emergency action. Now, for example, at my university, we started the new academic year and the new semester as, again, online teaching. This time for this semester, we seem to be more prepared. Of course, it doesn't necessarily mean that we are perfect, but we are more prepared. We gained some more experience related to the previous semester. Now we are doing something differently. However, I'm afraid we still need to go a bit far, especially with reference to assessment practices. I consider assessment practices as the most problematic aspect of this type of teaching, because I guess mainly we were more involved in revealing declarative knowledge rather than procedural or conditional knowledge when it comes to testing students. So last semester, for example, we encourage many teachers to turn their tests into assignments, into some practice-based assignments. So this seems to be the most problematic aspect to me. As the institution, we didn't benefit from any proctoring applications. We have some concerns related to this, especially concerning the GDPR, whether we are violating any privacy rights of our students. So, and what about their motivation, especially considering our faculty? We are training teachers. So do we really need such things in terms of assessment? But still, it seems to me that we have a lot to do related to assessment. Maybe as teachers or as lecturers or training teachers, we are prepared for teaching, but not for assessment completely.
Thank you so much. I also would like to invite everyone that is attending this seminar to ask questions in the chat or in the Q&A. And if any of you is answering, please choose all panelists and attendees. Otherwise, it's only between us panelists. That's why I copy-pasted your text, Fiona, and thank you so much for your resources link. So Valerie, you didn't have perhaps as much changes in the pandemics, but what I would like to know is what advice can you give us?
Certainly. Maybe I'll answer it in a little bit different way. One of the transitions that we made in the curriculum that I teach about a year and a half before the pandemic hit, we made a conscious decision to go all one modality, all online. Now there's a couple of variations of online, but one of the biggest things that we found was because we had a given course and there was the option for a student to take it in a face-to-face. Now I did not teach many of the face-to-face, or they could be taught asynchronously. So it was more of a packaged set of material and much more work by the individual student, or it could be done synchronously with a given lecture. And one of the things that we found was that you can't just immediately take a course and say, okay, well, this time we're going to teach it online synchronously, and this time we're going to teach it asynchronously, and this time going to teach it face-to-face. The material, the content, the learning objectives are the same, but the delivery is quite different if you want it to be effective. So we have eliminated the face-to-face completely. And for two of the curriculum in my department, we are doing all asynchronous. So we have chosen to do it to really specialize and improve the way we are delivering that, to get that student experience, to make sure that we are really getting the material across that we need to. So that's one perspective. The other thing that even though we did not change from before the pandemic till after the pandemic, students were still struggling. It's just the entire world was changing. So even those that were steadily employed and had been taking classes online, they had other stressors in their lives. So there were some things that were changing. I saw a lot more We do a lot of group assignments, and I'd be glad to talk about how group assignments can possibly work in an online environment. But they're actually one of my favorite skill building for the types of things that I teach, enabling students to be able to work in a diverse community, in a remote environment, very much like real world, where it is a global economy. So working in those types of environments, it became really stressful for many students. I must say the kind of students that teach, it started, I can't remember who said it up front, but often in an online environment, you tend to have students who are a little bit older. I have a variety of relatively old students who are returning to get either a bachelor's or a master's degree. I teach both of those. But I also have relatively young people who are maybe first time to college. So there is quite a gambit of who they are, where they are in. One of the challenges that I face is teaching in multiple time zones. I'm teaching 2 classes right now, and I have students in Afghanistan, Japan, Korea, Romania, of course, the US, Canada, a few different places in South America. So you have a lot of different time zones that you're dealing with. So those are additional stressors if you're working in that kind of, almost I'll say a non-traditional environment. The biggest advice that I really have is really think about the design of the course. Just I would not assume that you can just immediately take a course that you've been delivering successfully face-to-face and immediately assume that now you just deliver it online. There is a transition that needs to occur, not just the lecture, but the types of assignments that are being done. Think about how a student is going to respond to that working in this independent environment and what they may choose to do because they're now working in an independent environment, to include going online, looking for answers, and how you can design the courses and design the assignments to be, I'll say, plagiarism resistant. I don't think there is anything called plagiarism proof, but how can you design it so it's difficult for it to just be a copy and paste?
Yeah, exactly. I couldn't agree more. I think the design of the course must be different. And also don't, if I may give an advice, don't use the technology. There are so many resources, so stop reinventing the wheel. Use the resources that already are online, because you can use them actually much easier in an online course than in the campus face-to-face course.
Yeah, if I could just another point on that, the availability of options in an online environment is almost endless. You can post videos, you can post, like one of the things that we do with many of our students is we have them do a recorded, narrated PowerPoint presentation. Instead of having them do a research assignment, they present their results. And what it enables you to do is, first of all, it's an authentic, because right at the beginning, we have them introduce themselves. You hear their voice, you know what their voice sounds like. And now throughout the term, they are giving this presentation. So you could question whether they did the work that goes on the slides themselves, but you know that they are at least delivering that presentation. So there are just a number of different alternatives, supplementing it by video, really trying to get those. I know we're going to later talk about student engagement, but there are so many options. So instead of thinking of online as, we had to go to online, or, this is we have no other choice, I really view it as the upside. There are some real benefits of being in an online environment, albeit so many people were forced into the environment and didn't necessarily have the training or resources to do that.
We have a few questions from the from the audience. I'm going to start with Ilses. Can you suggest the positive aspects of switching online? For instance, I really like group works in Zoom through break rooms. It is much faster to set everything up than in classroom. Inga?
So because also I was the one switching from face-to-face on online, so I can tell some of my findings. So what I noticed already in spring, so the first lecture was terrible, for myself. But then during the seminars, also I saw that initial students were a bit hesitant to participate. And then I found that, for example, if we are having some kind of discussion, so I used the chat function. And it actually worked very well. And I noted, and because I could compare, so half of the semester with the same students, I had face-to-face in the class, and then the other half online. And I could see that some of the students who would be quite silent in the classroom, they became a bit more active with the chat. So it means it was somehow more comfortable for them to try the answers. And so it really worked well for me. Then another thing, what I found and now I use are those kind of shared document environments. So because I teach things in sociology, so from time to time we have to construct some questionnaires and other tools. So it is very useful. So you put the document like Google Docs, for example, and you ask the students to contribute straight to it and to provide suggestions, to change each other's inscriptions, and to come up with this collaborative final product, which we then all can use. So it was also quite an efficient strategy.
Mm-hmm. Any comments?
I think to comment on the use of the chat, one of the big differences that I found between conducting in a face-to-face environment versus using the chat really have to be aware of who is commenting and who isn't. So what I actually do is, if I'm teaching online and using a chat, I will have a check mark, and anytime anybody makes a comment, I'll make a little check next to their name. Periodically, I'll say, let's hear from somebody who hasn't had a chance to say anything. Just kind of open it up. Or if people are still not participating, say, Mary, what is your thoughts on this? And usually you'll get, oh, could you repeat that? My audio wasn't working very well. But it kind of puts people on notice that it is not this is time to go take a coffee break or be reading something else, that the expectations are that you are paying attention and contributing to the environment. So it's just maybe the teacher awareness of the environment and different ways of interceding are important.
Mm-hmm.
What I also did with the chat, so sometimes you ask to put the comments like silent. Everyone puts what they want, and then you switch back to the discussion and saying, okay, so we have so many points. Let's now categorize them. So what common points we have and discuss, and it also then allows other students to switch in. So it really facilitates the action. And I would say again, I feel that it facilitates it more than it was possible in the face-to-face interaction even.
Mm-hmm. Fiona?
Can I jump in? Yeah, thanks a million. Just to the contributor who talked about breakout rooms, I do teach as well as working with academics. I teach on a kind of a tutors program for those who are tutoring. And I've been using the breakout rooms, but I found sometimes they're a little bit abrupt. The first couple of times I used them, I felt a little bit rude because you just press the button and they're all gone and you've hardly said goodbye to them. And then they're in the middle of discussion and you bring them back in. So I kind of talked through that issue with them beforehand, say, it feels a little bit rude. But also I give them an opportunity to email me. I say, email me if you get lost in the corridor, because if they lose their breakout room, they can be very lost. But I think the breakout rooms are really brilliant and students seem to enjoy them because they get to know each other. In terms of the chat box, a colleague of mine asks for volunteers in every lecture that she's doing online. And she asks for one volunteer to manage the time for her, and she gives her a class plan. And she asks for another volunteer to manage the chat box, and she sets herself a timer. So she comes to the volunteer and says, Sonja, anything in the chat box now that you'd like to share with the class. So involve the students like that, but the chat box is really good. And another tool we've been using in DCU, which we've been having great success with, is I know Zoom has a poll system and that's really good, but we're using Vivox, and that's a very dynamic polling system. And I've been using it to start any workshops or teaching sessions for the word cloud to help people settle in, particularly because all of this is new to a lot of people. So just say, type in one word saying how you're feeling today. It's a lovely icebreaker and it kind of settles everyone in. And obviously, yeah, it's clear to see everyone, a lot of people are feeling the same way. But also you can use Vivox then at the end. We've been encouraging our staff to use this at the end to check in with the students. And Vivox have pre-designed templates. So you can bring 2 or 3 really quick questions in just to help get feedback from students on how today's session went, and perhaps what additional resources or reusable learning objects you might need to have to create to plug gaps that perhaps are still there with students. So there are a couple of the things that have worked for us in DCU.
I think that interactivity is the key, and I have a question here in a chat box. It says, I like the idea of group assignments as for possibly reducing the risk of, just a second, of malpractice. Students have to share responsibility for integrity and peer pressure in this may work, but how do you mark group assignments? How do you check that they have all actually contributed? Salim?
Sonja, indeed, I'm not a fan of group assignments. I like more individual work, but of course it is possible to ask for group tasks. However, we need to be very careful about collaboration here, because we need to show the clear line between collaboration and collusion, because collusion will be also related to contract cheating. And here, I guess we need to refer to the ICAI's yesterday's statement against contract cheating. It provides some useful suggestions for all parties, including students, managers, teachers, and the vendors. So the responsibilities, whose responsibility is what. So if as a teacher we are assigning a group project, it means that we need to assign different roles to the people involved in the group project and clearly identify their contribution. Who is contributing what? Because if there is a failure in the group project due to one of the group members, for example, then the other group members might be affected from this failure. So is this fair enough to give low scores to the other members? So the teacher should have some responsibility to identify some roles to the students involved here. And my suggestion will be here, rather than focusing on product-oriented approaches, we should focus more on process-oriented approaches. So we should enable students to submit several revisions so that throughout the semester, for example, as teachers, we can see what or how the student is progressing in cooperation with the aims of the course.
Thank you. I have yes, Camilla, I just wanted to ask you a question we have in a chat. What is the next course of action for colleges in terms of tackling academic misconduct or promoting academic integrity? Because you wrote about contract cheating, so please tell us an answer.
Well, I think that the next step, I mean, like we've talked about, one of the benefits of having this COVID-19 is people are talking about academic integrity, and I think one of the things that especially ICAI really focuses on is building a culture of academic integrity. And for instance, I was talking with a student yesterday who was alleged to have been texting friends during in a group chat during an exam. And so it was actually another student in the group chat who submitted this to the professor, said, hey, here's all the screenshots of the entire group chat. And and it was a conversation with this student saying, would you have ever even thought about texting somebody or looking to your side in an online test? And like, well, no. So, well, it's the same situation. We're still in that learning environment. And so I think it's having those conversations with the students. That's the next step or continuing those conversations to realize that academic integrity didn't stop when we went online. There might be different ways that professors see any kind of violations or concerns, but it's the idea that students have to hold other students accountable. And so it's not just the professor doing that, but it is building that entire culture. So that entire environment, they know that, hey, I've got other people who are going to be checking on me or could tell on me, if you want to think about it that way. And so that's even kind of with the group assignments, that we encourage some peer reviews. So when a professor, when you turn in your group assignment, you actually have to say, this is the grade maybe I would give all my other group members. This is what they did. These are my thoughts. Now, that doesn't necessarily reflect exactly what the grade the professor will give, but it gives them input about what's going on. And so I think it's building that culture and knowing that we're all in it together is going to be the key component to be able to move forward.
Thank you. Any other comments and ideas? Mustafa and then Salim, sorry.
I think the question about how universities are going to respond to this issue of online teaching and academic integrity, and I see two ways of dealing with this. The first one is the instrumental. The second one is moral process. What I mean by instrumental process is that universities are now asking professors to put an academic integrity statement in their course syllabuses and each assignments and each exam, and talk openly about what plagiarism is and how they avoid it. And instead of catching students or monitoring their plagiarism, they are letting them to check the plagiarism through several softwares and instruments. That's an option that's used as an instrumental way. And providing students with the tutorials and websites. Universities are now creating websites and tutorials for the students. And as Salim explained, they are now focusing on the process-based evaluation. Instead of assigning tests and quizzes, now universities ask academicians to consider essays, papers, projects, discussions, blogs, wikis, e-portfolios. These are the important aspects. Group project and group collaborative learning projects are also becoming an important aspect of universities' requirement for professors to include in their instruction. And the good thing, when we go back to the first question, what are the advantages of e-learning or distance learning? One advantage is that the ICT literacy level of the professors and students are rapidly increasing. And when we talk about the 21st century literacy skills, now I think we are seeing an enormous increase in that way of seeing this abilities, ICT abilities, and these are very big advantages. And for the workforce, in the future workforce, now companies are looking for students who can manipulate the media and software applications. And I think these are great opportunities coming with the e-learning. And what I mean by the moral accomplishment, now I saw in several universities, they are asking professors to have open conversation about the moral integrity and what does it mean to be a moral person as an individual, and in teacher education programs, what it means to be a teacher as a moral accomplishment. And you are asking students that we don't need to check whether you are doing the right thing or your thing. You are going to be a teacher, and it's your responsibility to be an example, great example for your students and for your community. And then this is what I'm calling the moral accomplishment. I think these are the two issues that we can discuss in terms of universities' approach towards instructional requirements.
Yeah, I think too that teacher as role model is extremely important. And on the student panel we had this Monday, we had 4 students, and each of them, we asked them, okay, how come you're also interested in academic integrity? And they were naming their teachers that really inspire them. And that's really important. I think it's a very important lesson for us as teachers to remember that we are role models for our students and that our integrity can help us build the culture as well. So we have to be very careful and inspirational. Salim, please, you are an inspiring teacher, so let me hear.
Yes, we are talking about building culture of academic integrity. It seems to be interacting with the development of academic integrity policies in a way. So what kind of approach do we take into consideration while we are developing such policies then? Okay, do we focus on detection of academic misconduct? Do we focus on reaction? Or as teacher educators here, teacher trainers, do we need to focus more on the pedagogical aspect of this? It means that as teachers, we need to have preventive role rather than having more roles on detection or reaction. Therefore, this was one of the important things, as we said previously, process approach enables this because students will be able to submit several drafts, which means that they will be, as Camilla said, they will be receiving feedback, such as peer feedback. However, we need to be careful about the application of peer feedback in practice, because peer feedback might be problematic from 2 aspects. Some students might be misleading each other, or some students might be reluctant not to criticize their friends. So my suggestion here at this step will be anonymous multi-mediated writing model that I developed, especially to avoid such failures in exchanging peer feedback. Thank you.
Fiona and then Inga.
Thank you very much. Really interesting conversations there. And I think it's a good question about where we're going or where we can go. I mean, what we're doing, and again, just to go back to the fact that it's really exciting that we're having these conversations, not only here, but in our universities and in our sector. And redesigning assessment, I think, is key in terms of where we go from here. And I think it's an opportunity to redesign assessments that are integrated, so a fully integrated assessment strategy, not only in the module, but across a stage and a program. And that integrated assessment strategy is scaffolded well with multiple feedback opportunities, so that the student is more committed to the process, maybe less inclined to cheat because they're seeing how they can grow and develop their work. And then there is, I suppose, a requirement to kind of validate their work at some point. So I'm working on an interesting project with Griffith University in Australia at the minute, and some of our academics are piloting this approach, and we're using interactive orals. So an interactive oral is a two-way conversation. It's not quite like a Viva, so it's a two-way conversation, but it allows you to, with a scaffolded integrated assessment, and the student is building up in terms of processes and artifacts, and you can see this development. And the use of an e-portfolio is another really good example of doing this. But then it culminates in this interactive oral where they come in and have some sort of a simulated, authentic experience where they come in and present their work to perhaps role. There's an element of role playing, so they're presenting their work to their assessor, but essentially the assessor is acting as maybe a management consultant, or if it's teacher education, it's the principal of a school, and you're selling a new artifact or some product that you've created. And that's a really good way of having a two-way conversation with the student to tease out some of the aspects you might not be confident around them having produced themselves. So that's sort of where we're going at the minute in DCU.
Thank you. There are some areas and some disciplines where it is much easier, of course, to have students write original assessments and to use their own contexts and experiences. But sometimes I get the question, okay, if you want if you study medicine, for instance, where multiple choice questions are very common, how can we ensure that students know? Because you can't really individualize, I don't know, anatomy. At least I don't want a doctor that has, discussed anatomy. I want a doctor that knows anatomy. Okay, Valerie, the microphone on. Valerie, the mic.
Yes, I'm sorry, I was on mute. Yeah, this is an area that we've had a lot of experience with, because we do have some online quizzes, not very large tests, but one of the things that is absolutely critical is multiple test banks, random selection of those questions, random selection of the order of the answers. And when we say multiple test banks, questions that are very, very similar to each other, but maybe a couple of words are different, which results in a different answer. So, it's pretty well guaranteed, I will almost say guaranteed, that if you have an online quiz, it's going to make its way to one of the homework helper sites like Course Hero. But what we found when we changed our design and we have the multiple test banks and we change the orders, we're seeing much fewer of those questions appear on Course Hero. It's just not worth their effort, because they're finding that, oh, wait a minute, it's not exactly the same. I've had students come back and say, wait a minute, there's something wrong with this online exam because I have a copy of the question and you changed the answer. So, they actually admit that. What can I say? So, I mean, and it's not a matter of manipulating the students. It's really trying to get them, are you getting an authentic assessment of what the student really knows? So it takes more effort, there's no doubt, and we refresh those quiz banks frequently.
So that's one idea. Camilla?
Well, I was just kind of thinking as we were having this discussion, in terms of what can we do to move forward, but even that authentic learning, that in some of the conversations that occurred yesterday in the 20-hour session with ICAI, was looking at how do we interact not just with our students in higher education, but looking back at our K-12, what would be the US K-12 or secondary schools, that it might not be an immediate change right now, but looking at what's going on in those schools, especially during this COVID time. Because I mean, I'm thinking about myself. I have a 6-year-old and a 10-year-old at home under a lot of stress. A lot of parents are under a lot of stress. And it's the question of, are the parents actually doing these assignments? Because those elementary and secondary school teachers, they never taught online either. And now they're having to teach things online. And so I think that's something that we can build up for. It might take some time, but building some of those initial ideas of, listen, yes, you have to do your assignment yourself. You can't have your mom, your dad do it. That will lead up into when they get into the higher education and we see them, hopefully they have those ideas developed and they can hopefully realize that, oh, I really should be doing something or not doing another thing. So I just I don't know, I was just thinking about how that secondary school is so very important before they even get to any of us.
Yeah, and everyone is nodding. We all agree, I think, about this one. Salim?
Here, maybe we need to question the aim of testing. Why do we test? For example, for comprehension purposes or for recall? So this might differentiate the question types that we are using. But anyway, in either situation, to me, it doesn't seem to be a good idea simply benefit from one technique, such as, for example, multiple choice questions, even if you change the orders, you change the place of distractor or anything else, because such questions will be coming with some advantages along with disadvantages. In order to overcome the disadvantages, we need to add some other types of questions, such as gap filling, cloze tests, summarizing, matching, or any other technique. So a combination of these all techniques will be providing more reliable and more valid testing opportunities to us, I guess.
Inga?
So after so many ideas, so some just reactions. So first to Camilla's, that of course during our ENI project and after it, we have been discussing a lot that if we talk about academic integrity at the university level, probably this is far too late. That we have to really start from I don't know, from the kindergarten, starting with very general I don't know, values discussions, yes, and then going to the secondary school level when the tasks, individual or self-dependent tasks are being given, yes, and because what I see in Lithuania, and we discuss with the partners that we can see in many other countries, that the practices that students gain during the secondary education, they differ quite much from what is required at the university level. And as long as we have this gap, that the work for the university is much more difficult. Yes. The other thing is that we have been discussing now a lot about the design of the assessment, the design of the tasks in the class. And what is my own experience, that like some really long time ago, I somehow thought that I really don't want to encounter all these situations where I get an essay and I see some marks of plagiarism there, or I get some copy-pasted answers to my questions, things like that. And I thought really hard, so what can I do as a teacher to prevent these things? And it leads to the reasons why students choose to cheat, why they might be inclined, what are the circumstances that I don't know, somehow encourage them to do that. And of course, there is a lot of research saying it's like some time constraints, or not being confident about some abilities, or not understanding something. So what I'm trying to do, and some of you also talked about it, that I'm trying to segment the tasks. I'm trying to make them smaller. If I'm giving an essay, I restrict it 3 or 4 pages, no more. If I'm asking for presentation, I also say no more than, I don't know, 8 slides. Yes, but what you put in these slides has to be good. and then also the oral presentation goes with that. So you always can see what actually student knows, how they prepare. And also constant monitoring. So basically, if I have during semester, I don't know, 2 or 3 tasks that students have to do, either individually or by group. Basically, every week, I have like 10 minutes at the end of seminar where I say, so what is your progress? Do you have any questions? Have you done this and this and that? So then you can see, and it shows to students that I see their progress, that I'm interested in it, and I know what topics they're working on. Yes, so this really helps. Then it minimizes their own willingness to cheat. They always can consult, so it minimizes this aspect of not being sure what to do. And then, of course, it reduces the pressure, because they don't have everything in big tasks at the end of the semester. They go to the end of the semester being done. And then if we have some kind of an exam, again, you put like specific things for the exam. I don't ask for some practical things. Yeah, so I ask in the exam only the things that I really want the students to, I don't know, memorize, or to be able to reflect upon, and so on. And I also, but of course, probably it's not possible when you have huge classes and I don't know, many flows of students to not to use testing anymore, but I do not use testing anymore. If I use some written exam type task, I use open-ended questions. And even those I make so that as I think Valerie said, that all these kinds of combinations. So the random question order, so some differences. So the question might sound the same, but there are some differences. I really try to customize the questions. So basically to put some very specific situations. If I give students to do the presentations, again, I put the limits so that they cannot find the common things on the internet. I give specific database. I give very specific, dimensions I want them to work on. And again, it really reduces the opportunities to do something from the outside.
Yes, and I suppose it's much nicer for you as a teacher to read those essays than to get 30 Wikipedia copied answers again and again and again. We have so many interesting discussion in the chat and so many good examples. Online, randomized online exams, interactive oral exams, and etc., etc. But one question is, how can we ensure, because this can be very time consuming for teachers to develop all of this, and many teachers are already overworked, on the verge of a break, burnout and everything. So how can we make sure that we still have teachers after the pandemic? Because if everyone is doing all of these time consuming things, I'm very concerned that people are going to end up with a burnout. And that's what teachers are telling me. It's wonderful, but we don't have time to do this. Great to design all these assessments in an individual way. What do you think about that? Because that's also an aspect of all of this. We want to ensure to get honest answers from our students, no collusion, no cheating, no plagiarism. But how? Any advice on that?
If I can come in just very quickly, the colleagues I'm working with in Griffith University have conducted extensive research on the use of interactive orals, and they find it a very efficient way to, and they've evidence to show promotes academic integrity and it prepares them for industry, but also it's very scalable. So they have 15 minutes per student in that kind of assessment space. And they have, I put the SWAY resource in there, they've loads of support documents and guides on how they set that up. So they're scaling that to about 400 students quite effectively.
Thank you. Valerie?
Well, you may not want to hear this, but I find that online teaching, it's 7 days a week. Okay, that doesn't necessarily mean the same number of hours each day, but keeping engaged with the students, the way we're structured at my university, I have one class that ends on a Sunday night and the other one that ends on a Tuesday night. So throughout that entire week, students may be posting questions, they may be texting me, they may be sending me emails. And part of, if you look at the literature, part of the reason that students cheat is they feel like they don't have guidance, they don't know where to go. So they may be tempted to go look at, some online site, but if instructors are there for them, and I don't mean 24 hours a day, but trying to really keep up with that and to respond in a timely manner, I think it's important. I do have hobbies, I do have a life, but it's 7 days a week.
Yeah. I recognize that. I call it a lifestyle to be a teacher, online teacher. It really makes changes. And I also can, from my experience, if you can get an answer promptly and just check it, it doesn't have to take a lot of time, but just to give answers, because students can get stuck and lose precious time when they can work, especially if you have online courses. Normally some of those students are doing something else during the week, they study on the weekends, and if they can get a short answer, they really appreciate that. But of course, I think we should get the university should allocate to us more resources to do that. Yeah, Mustafa?
Actually, it's also another ethical issue, and privacy of the professor and the free time of the worker. Therefore, I think we need to be wise about this issue, and then informing students about the the importance of taking care of your business at a certain time and it needs to be defined within your syllabus. Otherwise, I think it's not a good way to be open to students 24/7. I don't think that this is a appropriate way to inform our students about how this teaching is going on. Otherwise, we might have so many serious issues in the future.
Thank you, Inga.
Yeah, I think we will all agree that teaching is kind of profession from which it's difficult to detach yourself. But I would agree that I think the relationship with students is very important. And it is very important how you start building it from the very beginning of your course. And I think it's really worth your time to give it in the beginning and to set the line. So how will we work? And this is what I agree with usually with the students. So where I can be a bit softer, yeah, that if there are any problems, we can always discuss it. But I mean, we will not be discussing all of them at the end of the course. Yeah, so please know that I'm not that teacher. Yeah, so we agree about the conditions in the beginning, and this is also, I don't know if it's rude or something, but I always discuss with them that, you know, I also have weekends. Yes, I need some rest time. So let's agree, yes, that if we have class on Monday morning and you write me on Sunday night, like really do not expect me to answer. Yes, so it means you have to plan a little bit, at least on Friday. Yes, and again, I try to assure them that even if something like this happens, so okay, on Monday we will solve this issue in the classroom. So then, at least from in my classes, they know that they can expect this kind of support. And it again, I think it reduces. And as Sonja, you asked, so is it a burnout? I mean, I think it's kind of a balance. So yes, it was difficult in the beginning to construct all these things, to prepare myself, but then you have it and you start adjusting it to your particular classes. You always have the basis. And for me, it is more difficult to deal with the opposite situations, to deal with cheating, to deal with misconduct, to deal with all these conflicts. So I solved it this way. And also, I think it's easier to give more communication with the students all the time than to have these kind of things later. But again, yes, I think that drawing these lines openly in the beginning, how will we work and how we will communicate is very important, because then they know. And then when I don't reply them on Sunday, I mean, they know the reason.
I think that's very wise. I'm asking you this because I know there are different views on this. And we have some excellent advice here in the chat about using students as partners in designing assessments and peer review strategies that might help teachers to reduce workload. And setting expectations and encouraging students to be autonomous learners is really a good idea, I think. So thank you for these comments we have in the chat. Another question I wanted to ask you, how can we enhance student participation in Zoom? I have seen students that just put one earplug and then just go play games while in the Zoom listening to the lecture and just have a black screen. How can we reduce that? What's your strategy, Camilla?
I don't know if I have an exact answer for that question, but it brings up what Mustafa talked about at the very beginning, and I'm sure he might mention it some more, but I know in the US there's a lot of discussion about that you can't require a student to have their camera on, and that's from elementary all the way to collegiate levels. And so that's the concerning part of you might not be able to see them, but I think that it's using those tools, the chat box, the breakout rooms, that you can see their activity and rather than them maybe being on screen. But it is very difficult as a lecturer, teacher, professor, if you are just talking to many different names. I mean, I've done several webinars for things throughout these past 6 months, even for my own institution, and it is just lots of boxes of names, and that's very hard to teach to. But if you're able to incorporate some of those other tools that we've talked about, that gets them involved without maybe seeing their face on actually the screen. And I mean, we have the same situation that many of you have, that the internet might not be the best for all of our students. And so some of our students really cannot use video. It will crash their Wi-Fi. And so they have to have it off for those reasons. And it's not just because they don't want to be a part of the class. But I think it's going back to using those tools that we've talked about to engage the students.
Yeah, Fiona.
Yeah, thanks for that. It's an interesting question. I often think when we're asked that question, because a lot of academics ask us that question, I think it's difficult to engage students anyway, very often. I think even in a face-to-face environment, they could be distracted and detached and whatever else they could be. So yeah, I mean, I would definitely agree with Camilla in terms of tricks and tools. But one thing that's been working quite well for me is taking less time in the synchronous teaching class and more time dividing them. I use the choice function in the virtual learning environment so they can put themselves in groups of 6. And I do a lot of what I call WIP, work in progress meetings, where they have to come in and I tell them what they have to come in with. So, you know, first draft or questions around, or it could be just what's working well for you in the class. I want you to tell me what's going well for you, what's not going well for you. So we have those hour-long WIPs with 6 students and just less large teaching classes. The breakout rooms are cool as well. You see really quickly who's engaging and who's not, because they're still floating around in the main room sometimes, or, you know, their cameras. And of course, when you bring them back to the main room, their cameras are automatically turned on. But I take Camilla's point about connectivity problems. And the other thing I think that works quite well is that it goes back, I think, to what Inga was saying about building the relationship with them from the beginning, you know, and trying to get them to put photographs up and taking time at the beginning of every lecture to check in and see how they all are, and being comfortable a little bit with silences while they gather their thoughts and become confident enough to kind of contribute. Thank you.
Excellent. Inga?
Yeah, so I haven't solved yet the lecture part with only seeing the names, but I'm working on that. So I started using more and more of audience-directed questions or some small tasks, even when I'm giving a lecture, much more than I used to have, so that I get some kind of feedback that they are there, they are listening. You know, we are communicating even if the screen is kind of blank. But during these seminars, as much as possible, I ask them to turn on the cameras, in particular if we are talking, so the one who talks at least can do it. Again, as Camilla said, there can be the obvious problem why they cannot do it. So again, we agree that if there is such a problem, I don't do the pressure. Yeah, but really students are perceptive. I mean, if you talk and talk about that with them, if you keep asking them, also if they feel that the engagement is important and valued, they are more willing to do that. And let's say from the springtime now in the seminars, I don't feel that alone. I mean, I feel quite okay. And also these small tasks, like more of these different things happening in the online classroom keeps them engaged. And also they know I include some of these tasks as a part of the assessment. So they know that if they contribute meaningfully to things that are happening during the seminars, this will go to their final course assessment. And this is also an important argument.
Yes. Okay. I just wanted, we have such a short time. I would like to this is so engaging discussion. I wanted to ask you, how is this pandemic period going to change our future as educators, especially regarding academic integrity? What are your last thoughts on this? Camilla, we can start with you.
I knew it's that silence. You're being the teacher, you're going to call on somebody.
Yeah, I know.
Quite a big question to finish. I mean, I think a lot of us are have already thought about in 10 to 15 years, what are we going to be telling people about the year of 2020? And so I'm hoping that we're using this experience, like Fiona started off with, that we aren't looking at it as a horrible experience, but we're able to see those opportunities that came about. And I think that was a great way to frame the way that we're looking at it. And so I'm hoping that, going back to what I made a comment earlier, that we're able to, this starts conversations and continues conversations about building that culture. And so I'm hoping that is going to be the outcome. So as much as negativity that it's been, we're able to bring some positive out of it. And students hopefully are able to come out of it with greater skills. I mean, they're learning the technology, they're learning new things, and our K-12 students are doing the same thing. They're having to learn a learning management software at a very young age. And so I think those are the things that are going to be the good outcomes. And hopefully in 10 to 15 years, that's what we're gonna really remember about this time, and not just being stuck inside our own four walls for quite a while.
So thank you, Fiona.
Yeah, thank you, Camilla. It is a big question. I really enjoyed what Mustafa's angle is coming, Mustafa's angle around the ethics. We had a very interesting webinar in our university yesterday evening, where we had academics and staff, and we had our Dean of Teaching and Learning in. So we invited somebody who's studying ethics to come and speak to us first to set the scene. And he really framed it very nicely around, and this is where I think we're going in the future. If we can have these kind of conversations where you're appealing to academics and students' kind of inner moral compass to be good people. Like, you know, we all want to be the best version of ourselves. And I think it might be an opportunity to have more of those conversations rather than the punitive type conversations. And, you know, the ethics PhD student who set the scene for us, he tied ethical behavior in very nicely with the university's strategy and vision. Because most universities have some sort of a point about transforming society. And he made the point that you cannot transform society after you leave this university if you are not an ethical person, if you don't have those kind of, if you don't have that internal moral compass. So it was a very nice way of framing the discussion around academic integrity. And I know Mustafa has brought that to our attention a couple of times today, and it's really nice to hear that.
Mustafa?
I think we will see more investment and innovation in instructional technology. And we will see universities will create infrastructures on Center for Teaching Excellences. They will transform the Center for Teaching Excellences in a different way. And probably universities will require professors to take certain courses before teaching courses. One of them will be, as Valerie explained in her speech, that there are certain requirements, elements that you need to know from experienced people, what problems, what issues they face during this online teaching, and then how can they integrate to their courses. And the third issue is that I think the issue of accessibility, and especially the special needs students, and then have to reach out to these students and then have to integrate them to your instruction, and is going to be a very important aspect of the future discussions.
Yeah. And Camilla, could you please read what you just wrote and let it be our last words, because we don't have any more time, unfortunately.
Oh, yeah, so I was following up what Fiona said, and it's ICAI has developed over the years the fundamental values of academic integrity, and so it's helping our students understand, but also internalize those fundamental values, which are honesty, trust, fairness, respect, responsibility, and doing all of those things with courage. So hopefully our students will learn that and like I said, bring that into their own selves. So then after they leave us, they can go into the world and make the changes that we're hoping they'll make.
So thank you for this lovely and engaging discussion. I really enjoyed it. I'm so sad almost that we don't have any more time, but I hope that we can arrange a series of webinars or something and meet again and continue this interesting conversation. Thank you so much. And thank you for all our guests in the behalf of INAI. So yeah. You'll have the video online today in case you didn't have time to catch up in the beginning. So yeah, thank you. Have a nice day.